Hi everybody, it's Connie, and um, this is going to probably be one of my heavier videos, but probably one of the most important too. Um, so I hope you will all give it a listen because I think there are things in it that can apply to every one of us. Um, and so I'm wearing my glasses because in case there's tears, I'm going to try to keep things under control, but if I don't succeed, at least it should be easier to, at least it won't be as apparent with my glasses. So yeah, see, they're multi-purpose. But anyway, so this video is just going to be my own biased perspective on a few things. So I'm sure if anybody else told the story, they would put the focus probably somewhere else and have some different memories or ways they interpret things or whatever. But this is the best that I can be at being as transparent as possible while also trying to respect people's privacy. So, yeah, that's kind of not the easiest line to draw for to reach that balance, but I am going to try very hard to do that justice. And I will say a little bit more about people that have like passed on and are no longer with us because, of course, they don't care anymore. And that might just kind of help to illustrate some of the points that I'm getting at about family dynamics and um, all that kind of thing. So, anyway, um, if you're a regular watcher of my videos, you probably saw some of the recent ones I posted of my family during the holiday season. We had such a great time, and um, hopefully that came through to some extent. How we just love having fun together, and um, I think I'm just so proud of the fact of how close we are, and I know that's not something to be taken for granted at all because we're all imperfect people and things can just turn on a dime. I've learned that lesson too. Um, and so anyway, I just this video is going to be about how even though we are close and can have great times together, we are far from perfect. And of course, only the good moments are captured on video, which I guess is as it should be. I mean, who wants to watch a bunch of unpleasantness? I mean, um, we get enough of that without going after it specifically. So in our daily lives, but um, it's just interesting, though, this phenomenon of being triggered, which I've only been starting to learn about in recent years, but it is a real thing. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind about that. That's not my opinion. That is a fact, as I see it anyway. I mean, you're free to disagree with me, but my own experience in myself and from others around me, um, I just know what a powerful thing it can be to be triggered in a way that it can sometimes, if something unpleasant happens, that brings up, like, I guess I should define how I look at triggering. It's when you overreact to something because the event brings up a past memory or a traumatic event or whatever that brings up all these emotions and stuff from back then, but it's just similar enough to now, or it just reminds you there's enough there that you overreact in the moment, and then it can just really escalate from there. And sometimes to the point where it can almost overshadow all the good days that preceded it or whatever. This one bad thing just can kind of escalate and get out of control, and then people can say, like, what is the big deal, why are you overreacting to this so much? And then you can get all angry and everything, and um yeah, it can just kind of go from there. So um So, s- things also often tend to come to a head during the holidays, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys that. The holidays can be a very stressful time for people and often a very sad time, too, for some people. And but when there are big family gatherings, I mean, everybody comes together with all the different personalities and dynamics at play, and of course, you're all squished together for a set amount of time, however many days, and your normal routine is like disrupted. Um, and there's just at this time of year, there's end of year stuff happening. Like if you're a student, you had to go through all the stress of your finals, or sometimes there's stuff at year end that happens with your job too and whatnot. And so, yeah, there's just so many factors at play, and then stuff from the past, like I alluded to a minute ago, that can resurface. Sometimes when you just least expect it, that's kind of what trigger means. Because if you knew it was going to happen, you'd try to avoid those kind of situations. But sometimes you're just unaware until afterward. Then when you stop and reflect, like, why did this happen? And then you start to figure out, hopefully, oh, I guess that's probably how that happened. But it's just really easy for things to get exaggerated sometimes. And so, yeah, I'm just going to give you a few examples here, just to give you a sense of the some of the dynamics that play in my own life, that kind of made me who I am, flaws and all, today. And so, yeah, I came from a small town where everybody knew everything about everybody else, or thought they did. And I mean, I love small towns, and I love the town where I grew up and everything. But there's also, of course, a downside to that, too, just because of the closeness. Word travels quickly, and my mom, especially, was very sensitive to that. Um, she was really proud of her family, but didn't quite know how to handle it when things went less than perfectly. And because that's something that didn't quite fit into this perfect family scenario that like people thought she had, or she thought they thought that, I mean, that people like admired her family and like looked up to her and all that kind of thing, which I mean, she was a great mom in a lot of ways. And it's important that we uh try to also, yeah, see the person as a whole person, and not just focus too much on either the good or the bad, but just see them as imperfect human beings like we all are. And but the ironic thing is that I might have inherited some of those same, well, and not might, I mean, I definitely have inherited some of that tendency to not want to um be completely honest sometimes, even with my best friends, about like things that are going on. Just Yeah, I just don't like to say things until like I already see the light at the end of the tunnel, or a solution is in sight or whatever. But while I'm in the worst of it, that's the time when I probably should share more, but that's the time when I tend to like avoid things. But it's just weird though that like I was so aware of that in my mom, but yet I repeat the same mistakes. I mean, you hear about that kind of thing in psychology books and stuff, where as much as you don't want to or whatever, it's these family patterns just tend to repeat themselves unless you just make a real effort. But sometimes you don't even realize that you have like the same tendencies or whatever, because we all have these blind spots too, unless somebody else brings it to our attention. And even then, it can be, we can like get all defensive and double down and say, "What? You're crazy. How can you think that?" Unless we really stop and reflect and want to try to see from the other person's point of view. Um, and so, the first one of the first big things that I can remember, which of course I didn't even know at the time until a lot later, but the first big thing that kind of popped my mom's bubble of this perfect family was that her brother was gay. And I mean, now, fortunately, we live in a day and age where that isn't really even seen in most cases, at least, as being anything like abnormal or bad or whatever. But back then, in the late 60s and early 70s and stuff, people weren't nearly as accepting of that type of thing as they are now. And so, especially where I grew up, like I said, in a smaller community and everything. And so he moved to California at a very young age. So, like, he wasn't home that much. So it was easier to keep it hidden, supposedly. At least mom hoped so or thought so or whatever. But people guessed anyway, of course, after time went by. Like when he would come back for visits or just whatever, they can put two and two together. Um, but um, she was supportive of him in her own way. Like she kept in touch with him, and they had a really loving relationship. Not so much during their growing up years when they like she was a little older than him and would terrorize him sometimes or whatever. But of course, as often happens, they became very close then as adults. Um and anyway, like mom and the grandparents, her parents, and Kim and I, when we were about 7 or 8, we went to California to see him one time, and that was one of our favorite memories. We went to Disneyland and everything. And like I said, he came home sometimes and stuff for visits, and was just a very nice and smart. I mean, I wish I knew him better because we were just starting to get to know him, Kim and I, my sister and I, as young adults. And he was giving my sister advice because her boyfriend at the time had cancer, and my uncle had like a medical degree and stuff, and was trying to walk her through some of that and what to expect or whatever. And so yeah, I just really wish we could have known him more. I think we it's just interesting to think about what might have been in that regard if we had. And yeah, he probably could have walked us through a lot of things, come to think of it. And his friends too. One of his close friends, Debbie, really became a close friend of my mom. And it's just, I'm not even to the hard part of the story yet. So yeah, I'm not going to start crying. um, but anyway, I can always pause this and restart and then merge the videos together if I have to. So, but anyway, so he passed away though, unfortunately, when we were shortly after college, and after we graduated, I should say. And so yeah, but even though mom like really loved him and everything, she just didn't want people in her own community to find out. And of course, dad, he was very religious, so he couldn't get past the quote unquote sinful nature of how God viewed like homosexuality as being an abomination and all this. And so yeah, that was the first big thing. And then the next one that I can remember was when my sister got a divorce. Um, and that was another thing that mom really wanted to keep hidden from people. I mean, and not like in a, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I mean, I can go into all this more possibly in future videos or whatever, with people's permission and whatnot. Because I think things like this are just kind of important to think about and hash through. And but yet I do want to do it in a way that is productive too, and applicable to everybody. So if you find videos like this helpful, be sure to like and subscribe and tell other people too, because yeah, I would like to talk about this kind of stuff more, I should say, but this kind of material isn't among my most viewed. Um, so I'm gonna wait till my audience is a little bit bigger, so you can help that to become a reality if this you appreciate this kind of um, thoughtful video and everything. That's probably not the most easiest to think about sometimes, but like I said, important. And so anyway, my sister lived further away, so she didn't get home as much as I did. But like I was starting to notice that when I would come home for family get-togethers or whatever, that a lot of times mom would kind of try to steer me away from people that would ask too many questions, like "How's your sister doing?" or whatever, because she was telling them one thing, and then she was afraid that I would say something different or whatever, and so that was just kind of awkward. And so people didn't really even start to find out some of this stuff until after social media became a thing, and then they found out about it that way. And yeah, I'm sure that was kind of jarring because yes, they just had no clue, and then and that was one of the things that kind of set my mom sadly on her downward spiral as far as health and everything, because she would interpret our being honest on Facebook or whatever about some of this as betraying her, and we that wasn't how we were seeing it at all, but that's how she was seeing it. And so yeah, and then the next big thing is when our worldviews started to differ significantly from our parents, and um this is when the tension really started with our dad in a big way, where he became the major offender, or whatever, however you want to say it, more so than our mom, because um, he had very rigid standards because of how he interpreted the Bible. Um, and many fundamentalists even still have a lot of these same views, but the difference is that most of them are not as consistent, I guess, um, as my dad was, as far as most people will put their relationships ahead of what God commands, I guess, is one way to put it. And or they'll find a way to convince themselves that I mean, I don't really have to. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna. That can be a whole another video. But dad believed that the only way to reach us was to practice tough love until we came to our senses, as he saw it. And so, anyway, a lot of these family feuds and discussions and stuff would take place over the holidays, because that's when everybody was together. And I mean, something would happen that would trigger us or whatever. And um, yeah, like my brother and sister and I all thrive on debate. Like we like to discuss things, and so we would talk. Be on Dad would be on one side, and our youngest brother probably isn't as much into that, because he just doesn't think it does any good, and ultimately it probably I didn't in that type of setting, I guess, when there's so much like emotions were involved and stuff. And then there's the people that just see it as conflict that should be avoided at all costs. Like, if, like, don't cast your pearls before swine. If they're not ready to hear the truth, then any amount of trying to convince them isn't going to do any good, is how some people look at it too. But, I mean, so yeah, it just has to be under the right. People just have to be really skilled, I think, at um, that kind of thing, debate and stuff. But anyway, then as the years went by, it became more than just debating. It was like getting to be more and more major, because we just differed on so much that meant so much to us. And of course, our kids were just really little at the time, but they were hearing a lot of this. And so um, we we think they're too young and they were just like in the background or whatever, so we think, oh, they won't remember this or it won't really be a big deal, but that is not at all true. I now know. I mean, if only we came with some of this knowledge ahead of time, but no matter how many parenting books you read or whatever, there's just some things that you're not going to realize at the time. um, but I was also homeschooling my kids too at this time, and I kind of had the same a similar type of philosophy with that too. Like sometimes I would know that I lost my temper and I had like crossed a line and had just kind of let things get out of control. But I just thought, if I just don't make a big deal out of it, they won't remember because um I just wanted to be you want your kids to, um, like, respect, but, I mean, now I know that the right thing to do, it would just be to apologize in the moment when I knew I had gone too far and try to talk it out right then, and, um, but, um, yeah, things have just changed so much for the better, I think, in parenting and what is tolerated, and, uh so, yeah, if I just hadn't tried to gloss over things so much, I mean, because some of those events, now later I realized that were far from forgotten, and those resentments just linger on. I mean, sometimes, of course, it's mostly under the surface for the most part, but then something will come up that brings it all back. Um, and So yeah, all this stuff though was happening at around the same time with my parents and my kids, and then my sister with her kids. Her marriage was starting to fall apart and whatnot, and um just trying to digest our whole, like, what do we think about things now that we've changed so much in our beliefs and all that too. Um, And so in 2014, things pretty much came to a head during the holidays again. And there was like a big blow up, and um, I mean, I shouldn't laugh. It's not at all funny, but so that was the last time that we had a family gathering out at the ranch where I grew up. Um, and so after that, we had them at my house for several years. And so I'm glad we, even through all this, we still were able to continue our family gatherings at least once a year, if not more. And then we would still do the conference calls and stuff throughout the year where we would talk and tell people what had been going on with us lately. And our family would all get together, including my parents, would get in on those. Later on, my dad stopped even joining in on those for the most part, and he came to a couple of the family gatherings at my house, but my mom came to every one, so she's to be commended for that. But other than that, um, but my nephew, just to show you how powerful this can be, like he was like 9 or something at the time of our last um, get together out there, and so he blocked it out to the point that he didn't even remember our house anymore out there on the ranch. Sorry, but I think it's important to be, like I said, transparent. So I don't want to just gloss over how hard some of this is. But um, Yeah, like my sister would try to describe it to him, and like, don't you remember? You come in the door, and then there's these steps down into the living room and stuff like that. And he just totally did not remember it, um, until we sorry, until my parents died, and we had our memorial service. And so anyway, then he everybody was out there for that, and then once he saw it again, then the memories started coming back. But so yeah, it's just amazing though, uh just things that you just don't think would ever happen. Like, we just never would have thought that our family would be like not able to go out there for a year, because we are such a close family. And so it just reminds me that even now, uh we have to just make it a priority to talk through things and try to communicate, because I don't want any rifts like that to happen again. um so anyway, uh so what was I gonna say here to kind of wrap this up? um yeah, so there are a lot of not so good, there are a lot of sad memories that come up at this time of year for us, and I'm sure for a lot of you as well. Because it's, like, you think of Christmas, it's supposed to be a time of togetherness and love and joy and all that, but a lot of times it's also the time that brings up the most sadness too, and this year was no exception for us either. um but what I love about my family is I think that we're all committed to doing what it takes to get back on track, no matter how angry we might be, or how resentful, or whatever, that we're just determined to change, do what it takes to change whatever we can, and to be more tolerant of differences in others who might not agree with us. And so yeah, I'm sorry to be such a downer, as I said earlier, but I think this is just really important, and hopefully you find it helpful and not just sad, but yeah, helpful. And how we can all try to act in the future. Um, and our family is big enough too that there's enough of us that if some of us are starting to feel overwhelmed, there's people that can like um like I have my sister to talk to about parenting stuff, or I have my uh niece she's a great mediator, and my daughter to help me explain other relationships and just things I hadn't thought of, and help me to see the flaws in myself and everything, and things that I need to work on. And yeah, like, everybody just has a vital role to play in our family, and I just can't imagine what life would be like without any of them. So sorry, but just to close, we all are dysfunctional. So don't let anyone convince you that their life is better than yours or more perfect or whatever, because it's just not that way. And we can go into things with the best of intentions, like, oh, I'm going to do things differently than my mom, or I'm going to be the best parent, or the whatever. But we may not make the same mistakes, but we make different ones. And I think society is getting better, but that also brings its own like hurdles, as the older generation clashes with the newer way of doing things. And yeah, so but my family is really special to me, and I hope that if you don't have strong family bonds like I am fortunate enough to do, to have in spite of, like I said, my flaws and everything, but, I just hope that you can find a community of friends that you can talk to, um, somebody that you can be totally honest with and that can